very warm welcome to another vlog. This time around I've travelled down to the Wexford wetlands. It's midwinter and the intention today is to photograph and video winter wildfowl and maybe a bird of prey or two. Ireland has always been a European stronghold for wintering wildfowl. Visitors from the Arctic Circle, as far away as Greenland, Canada, Iceland, Russia. When I was growing up, the thoughts of adventures in these Arctic landscapes filled my mind. But visiting those landscapes was so far from my reality back then. It may have been a different planet. But each year in October, over 50 species of birds, tens of thousands of geese and duck and swans, finches, etc., would make their way down from that frozen landscape to feed and to spend the winter here in Ireland. And the lowlands of Wexford were a big draw for those birds, and still are today. Once or twice each winter, I would travel down with the Irish Wildbird Conservancy, now Birdwatch Ireland, as they'd organise trips to try to find the speciality species of the winter. Smew is one bird that I distinctly remember, so rare now. A real Arctic bird, the male beautiful white and black markings. It's a long time since I've seen a smew. But back in the days before the internet, I know there were such days when magazines and books were the order of the day. And birders like myself, we studied those magazines and books with great intent. And the field guides, particularly the Collins Bird Guide of Britain and Europe, is a wonderful resource for wildlife photographers, for bird photographers, to learn about the habitats, the species, the plumage, from male, female, immature, and as the plumages change from winter to summer and into autumn. And it's a very important part of a bird photographer's kit to have that knowledge and to have the field craft. Well, last week I was searching through old boxes and I came across an old calendar and I cut the dates off it. And I remember why. Because the paintings of whooper swan and smew and pintail, I think it was by an artist called Gilmore, Robert Gilmore, if I'm not mistaken. Those paintings just meant so much to me. It brought back so many good memories of my youth and many hours in the field spent birding, of taking meticulous notes of my birding trips, sketching birds in the wild and when I got home from memory and from my notes. And that type of experience is really invaluable. So I would urge you to spend as much time in the field just with a pair of binoculars and a notepad and pencil. Study those field guides and know your subjects, because it really stands to you as a bird photographer and just the sheer enjoyment of observing these wonderful species as they gather in vast flocks on our wetlands here. Well, I got caught up in a little bit of nostalgia back there as I thought about my youth and my days birding back then. But on a more serious note, Irish Birds conducted a study, and the study showed that in the past 5 years, winter species have reduced, that's the volume of birds, by 15%. Think about that. That's in the past 5 years, 15%. These birds have been migrating since at least the last ice age, since 10,000 years ago. In the past 20 years, the number of birds has reduced by, wait for it, 40%. The body of water behind me is devoid of birds, but I know there are large enough flocks of duck and geese and waders here in the broader marshland. But I really don't think I would be leaping to any grand or delusionary conclusion in stating that in 20 or 30 or 40 years, these wetlands will be largely devoid of certain species. Now, don't get me wrong, other species such as Brent geese and also whooper swan are not doing too bad. But the overall picture is absolutely catastrophic. And that's not just in Ireland, that's across the world. And we all know that's. On the past hour or so, I've walked along where the sand dunes meet the marsh. And the extent of the flooding here is as you would expect at this time of year. And the birds are spread out throughout the marsh, half a mile up this way, half a mile down that way. So approaching the birds is proving very difficult. Now, there's a large number of winter wetland birds here. I've managed to film some lapwing in slow motion. We had a marsh harrier fly over, distant, but trying to video marsh harrier in this wind when it's a very brief flyover, and I may not see it again for the rest of the day, it's always going to be difficult. I haven't taken one still image, and that may be the type of day it is, and I'll live with that. But I'll persist with taking video today, and if the opportunity arises, we may get a few still images. And if not, that's the way the cookie crumbles. That's wildlife photography. So if you do plan to venture out with a telephoto lens to a wetland, it's extremely difficult to position yourself beside a hide, and this is a false hide as such. It's a gate and a fence, but it shields me from the birds. And some of the lapwing came in and landed not 50 yards away. Well, it's late afternoon now, about 2 hours to sunset. And one tip for wildlife photographers out there, or budding wildlife photographers, is expect to be disappointed and expect to be disappointed often. And persistence is the key. I've given up on the hope of getting a still image, a good still image of a duck or a goose. There's a couple of whooper swans flew over there. But the shooters, I think, have scattered the duck. The flooded fields here are just so extensive, and it gives the wildfowl plenty of space to move. Plenty of starling about. And it would be interesting to see if they form a murmuration. You're not going to believe this, but there's a murmuration right in front of me now. Now, not too many birds, I'd say 300 or 400, and they are passing over me here. I'm not sure, you may be able to pick it up on the microphone. Wow. Well, maybe hope is not lost altogether, but they're gone to the far side of the marsh. So, I mean, regardless, I'm enjoying myself out here. It's hard to beat an open wetland filled with wildlife. So, as dusk descended on the wetland, I made my way back through the fields between the water and the dunes. And as this is a photography channel, I thought it fitting to leave you with a small selection of winter wildfowl and wader images, and some typical birds of prey that also migrate to the coastal wetlands to hunt each year. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and it encourages you to venture out and experience this magnificent wildlife spectacle. Please subscribe and like. So until next time, thanks so much for watching.